What's up, gentlemen? So there's something really homey about a good bowl of fettuccine Alfredo. Like there's something about it that's just warm and homey and delicious. And if you've been eating stuff from the store-bought Alfredo sauce and the store-bought noodles, I want to make the argument that you have been selling yourself short on what is one of my favorite dishes as a kid. So there's 4 main ingredients to any basic Alfredo sauce. And I mean like the base ingredients before you add in any of the extra stuff, any of the extra flavors or anything like that, right? Parmesan cheese, cream cheese, butter, and of course, heavy cream. Now, 3 out of the 4 of the ingredients in Alfredo sauce are solids, which means that a proper Alfredo sauce, when refrigerated, is solid, which it is. But you'll also notice that whenever you get Alfredo sauce from the store, it is a liquid. And there's a reason for that. You'll notice that none of the ingredients I listed there were oil or water. And it turns out if you go to any store and look for Alfredo sauce in the aisles and look at the ingredients, which I did just for fun while I was shopping for these ingredients, the first ingredient is water, which means that all the Alfredo sauce that you get from the store, and this is, of course, this is by weight. So by weight, the biggest ingredient is water, which means that every Alfredo sauce you buy from the store is watered down, right? And then, of course, the next ingredient is usually cream, which it's going to be a bulk cream. It's not going to be anything that's of quality. And then, of course, oil, which is usually like a soybean oil or some sort of derivative. It's not going to be quality oil. And they use that to replace the butter because, you know, their sauce is pasteurized and it's stocked in jars that can last for 2 years straight without any refrigeration, which is a hint that not good stuff in it. And of course, it's always really bland unless you spend like $8 per can, in which case you can get something that tastes fairly good, but that doesn't stop them from putting even still low quality ingredients. This stuff here, the cream, I think $1.50, less than $1 for the cream cheese. The butter, less than $1 for a bar. I can make a Parmesan, an Alfredo sauce for, a family of 6 for less than, I'd say $6 or $7, And then the noodles. I have over here, I'm going to see if I can show you without disrupting the camera too much here, without shaking it too much. Fettuccine on a drying rack made from sprouted wheat flour. Because it turns out that I've been eating shit noodles my entire life too. I have in my pantry here stuff bought, over a year ago, 2 years ago even. This Healthy Harvest, linguine and the like, right? Always flavorless, bland. For the large part, it's been my experience that noodles aren't actually a food in and of themselves. They're just a texture, a bland texture that you put sauce on, and the sauce is what makes it good. Well, it turns out that's not actually the case. It's like if you make homemade noodles, which you don't have to, but I'm doing it because one, sprouted, noodles made from sprouted wheat are insanely healthy compared to regular noodles, which you would know if you had read Deep Nutrition, which all of you guys should have. There's also something that goes into when you take the time to actually make your own food that makes it, your own creation. Like you're pouring a little bit of soul into it because you spend so much of your life cooking, unless you're getting takeout and doing all that crap, which you can, but it's just not the same level of fulfillment, And what you'll find is if you take the time to make noodles, which, those noodles there, which is enough for, the equivalent of a whole box of noodles, was maybe 50 cents worth of flour and 6 eggs. That's it. So the taste of, a $5 box of noodles that cost me $2, right? And that's enough for a whole family too. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to show you how I made the noodles because that would be, a conversation for a whole different video. But we are going to do the sauce, which I'm going to show you the sauce. I'm going to show you how you can make it taste amazing because most people get it wrong. It's the way that you do the flavorings for it. So what we're going to start off with is all the dairy except for the Parmesan cheese. I'm going to start up my range here. You don't have to preheat anything. So these are the amounts, and I'll put these in the description as well. 1 whole pint heavy cream. 1 stick of butter, and that is 8 ounces, which is also half a cup. Does not matter if it is salted or unsalted. In this case, this isn't a baking recipe. And we're gonna be adding salt anyway, so it's actually gonna make no difference. So find a butter that you like and use it. And then 1/2 of a package of cream cheese. In America, I don't know how they do it elsewhere, but it does 4 ounces is what we're gonna use for this recipe. And 4 ounces is half a package, half an 8-ounce package. So that's what we're gonna put in here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in here, turn the temperature up to medium heat, and then we're going to melt it all together. And then once we melt it all together, that's when we're gonna move on to the next step. So I'm gonna finish doing this, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit more, and then I'm gonna pause the video so that all this shit can get melted in. Otherwise, we're gonna sit here in quietness, and while I do like my meditation time, it'll be a little bit awkward on a video, and I do not have the desire to spend 20 minutes making jump cuts for this video. Oh, and I forgot to add, as always, a little bit of pre-seasoning in alcohol form. I mean, it'll be with the food, but I like to add it before the food, so here's to the chef. Now, if you look online at any kind of sauce, what they'll often say is you add in, a teaspoon of salt or a half teaspoon of salt. This recipe that I originally found said exactly that, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which is actually really ridiculous, and here's why. Salt is not actually a flavor in and of itself. I mean, you can taste if something's salty, yeah. But in most recipes, salt is used to enhance the flavor of the dish. And so you don't actually add in an exact teaspoon of salt or a half teaspoon of salt or whatever the recipe says, except for baking. With baking, it has to be an exact measurement, which is why in baking they will specify between salted butter and unsalted butter. But that's not a different conversation. Obviously, I'm not baking right now. You salt to taste, which means that you add salt in increasing amounts until the dish tastes exactly like you want it to taste. And what the salt does is it improves the flavors of all the other ingredients in here. It has something to do with the way it interacts with your taste buds and the way it acts with the proteins. And so ideally what you want to do is you want to add enough salt just before it starts to taste salty. Like, you don't want to actually taste the salt. The pepper, which people will often say you need to spice the dish with salt and pepper, which we will be adding pepper, is actually a spice unto itself. Salt improves the flavor. Pepper adds a flavor, which of course we already know if you just think about it a little bit. Now, the additional things I'm going to be adding to this sauce is going to be, of course, a little bit of garlic. What I would say is if you want to go, do the full Monty, you're going to want to mince some garlic yourself. Right now, what I'm going to be using is garlic paste, which works great. You can also buy, minced garlic, of course. I recommend against using garlic powder because that's, highly concentrated, and it doesn't capture the full essence of the garlic. It makes the flavor more one-dimensional. Of course, some Italian seasoning. Obviously, I'm just using dried seasonings bottle, but you can get your own herbs and fresh chop them and add them in that way. It's going to make it a little bit tastier. It's going to make it a little bit fresher. And then there's all the kind of things that you can do to kind of mix it up from there. Obviously, you can add like shredded roasted bell pepper. You can add in more of the peppercorn to give it a little bit of extra kick. You can even throw in a little bit of red pepper if you want to. Or if you really, really are a garlic junkie, you can put in way more garlic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this simmer down, and we're going to get all this melted in, and then we're going to jump to the next phase. I'm going to pull this out from drying. A little thing about the tools. One thing I do recommend getting, a whisk, which you probably already have. See if you can find yourself a silicone whisk. I managed to get mine from Walmart for like $2. so it's 100% worth getting. The nice thing about a silicone whisk is that I can use this in, these non-stick pans and pots and not have to worry about scratching the bottom. So I'm gonna melt this down and then pause the video and we'll be back later. Testing 1, 2. Let's pretend that it's working. All right, so our butter's melted in, our cream cheese is melted in. Next part, not yet the chopped Parmesan cheese, but we're gonna add garlic paste. Now, with a good Alfredo sauce, the garlic, the pepper, the salt, and the Italian seasoning, these are all gonna be added to taste. Because you already have your base here, everything else is just extra flavor. You can start off with about a half teaspoon of each and add as you like. So mix this all in here and give it a few seconds to incorporate. And again, I'm using that silicone whisk so I can be as violent as I like without scratching up the sides. Not nearly enough salt. Now the reason why I'm adding the salt in this instance is this salt brings out the flavor of the Parmesan cheese. Because the other items, the cream cheese, the heavy cream, the butter, those are pretty bland flavors. The most flavorful component that we have here is this Parmesan cheese. But if you just mix it in with the other 3 ingredients, it kind of gets lost a little bit. And so what we're doing is we're using that salt, a little bit better, to bring out the flavor of the Parmesan. And that's where you'll get that nice, rich flavor and that taste that'll make the sauce just amazing. Now remember, because we're working with dairy in a pot, we do not want to boil it. Most we're going to do is we're going to simmer it. If you let it boil, what's going to happen is that at dairy, it's going to begin to curdle. And that is no good. Remember, no matter what recipe you're doing, you do want to taste what you're making. Otherwise, what will happen is you might miss a step, and you won't know that you missed that step until you tasted it. So if you don't taste it, you'd end up with an entirely ruined dish. You can't put the sauce back in the pot after you've already poured it on the noodles. Filling up a pot of water here so I can make my fettuccine. Should have done this a few minutes ago. The really nice thing about homemade fettuccine, about any homemade pasta really, is the fact that it cooks so much faster than completely dried store-bought pasta. And the nice thing about it is that even after it's dried, it'll take about 24, maybe 36 hours for it to dry. It'll actually, the weight of it will actually pull it off of that tree and cause it to break and fall in a little nice bundle. Is that the pasta that you normally get from a store, there's like a 1 minute window of getting it right. If you do it too short, you end up with a tough, bitter outside. And if you do it too long, it ends up mushy and it just has no texture to it whatsoever. And in that case, you end up with just, sauce flavored paste. No good. The reason why I love these noodles that you home make is because the window for you to fuck up is much wider. For that grace period is so much wider. And the noodles come out tender and fragrant. And you can taste the flour and you can taste the egg. And you might say, oh, well, the flour doesn't taste that great. It tastes way better. The flavor of these noodles is way better than tasting nothing at all. And it's just marvelous. All right, so that is good. So now I'm going to add in the cheese. This is just 1 cup of Parmesan cheese. And if you're going to if you're going to make your own homemade sauce, I recommend getting, as I showed you before, this is freshly grated Parmesan cheese that I got from the cheese aisle at my store. It's not, the stuff that you find on a shelf. This is nice and fresh. And the reason why I'm going for nice and fresh is it's not dry. It's going to melt nice and easily, and it's still got its full flavor. Now, you should get grated, not shredded. Grated is going to melt the easiest. It's incorporated in the sauce a lot nicer. I will say one thing about this sauce once it goes back into the refrigerator, once I'm done with it. You can reheat it easily with no loss of flavor. It still tastes fucking delicious. There is one thing to watch out though. Because it's got butter in it and dairy, the fat's going to want to separate. That butter is going to want to separate whenever you first reheat it, even if you put it in the microwave. So what you'll end up doing, and this isn't a really big problem, is you'll end up whisking it a little bit back together whenever you take it out of the oven and you reheat it for a meal. But a little bit of rewhisking is a good price to pay for something that is just absolutely unbelievable in terms of flavor, in terms of having a nice home cooked meal that you can just sit down and enjoy the fuck out of. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simmer this for another 5 minutes or so. Let that Parmesan cheese melt. Let it get in through the sauce. So I'm going to pause it. I'm going to finish that up. I'm going to get the noodles ready. I'm going to show you what I made. All right. And here we have it. Pork shoulder steak with delicious homemade fettuccine, topped with a nice Alfredo sauce. You can smell the garlic and the Parmesan and the pepper from here. And that is just amazing. And that's all you need to know to make a really good Alfredo sauce. I'm gonna go enjoy my meal now. See you later.